Haumetakuyapi, Chante Washte Napechu Uzapelo, Tatanka Wajila Machiapi. My American name is Joseph McNeil Jr. I'm the son of Joseph McNeil and Ina Mae Brown. My mother, Ina Mae Brown, is from Little Eagle here on Standing Rock. We're Lakota, Humpapa Lakota. And I'm humbled and honored to be in a conversation today with my brothers and my uncles to have this conversation to you about our future and the work that we humbly do and modestly do as we're taught, in our cultures to be of service for our people. I myself am the general manager for the Sage Development Authority here at Standing Rock. We're developing a 235 megawatt wind farm for our future self-determination. So we have our own resources to decide how we want to move forward in our economic development and social development here at the tribe. And I'll go around, we'll go around the panel and have everyone else introduce themselves and the organizations that they represent. And then we can get started. And I want to welcome everybody to our discussion this afternoon. Thank you for being here.
My name is Chris Peters. I'm with Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples. We've been working with Joe for about 3 or 4 years. And we administer the wind farm through Seventh Generation Fund and are pleased to do that. We wished we had considerably more time during this period of pandemic to reach out, to be on site, to be with Joe and watch the development of the wind project more closely. But we're strapped with what we got. I'm Yurok and Karuk Indian from Northwestern California along the Klamath River. My people have been here since time immemorial. I'm a cultural leader, a dance leader, and we do world renewal ceremonies. Every year we recreate the world, set things back in balance, and look for a brighter future. Seventh Generation Fund is the grandmother of Native philanthropic organizations. We're 43 years old, and I've been with the organization in a leadership position now for 33 years. I am the president currently, and we fund optimism in Native communities, traditional communities, grassroots communities that can see beyond the oppression of their people and look for a brighter future, an optimistic future that we will survive. We will survive and we will thrive as a people again. And to do that, we need to work hard. And that's what the wind farm represents in our organizing efforts, in our work, is to make things happen. So I'll pass it on to Dallas.
Yes. I'm trying to see if my sound is working. It's working, right? You can hear me?
Sound good.
Hey, relatives. Dallas Goldtooth here. My name is Dallas Goldtooth. I am Dakota and Dine. I'm Mdewakanton, Dakota, from a place called Chaney, where they paint the trees red, also known as the Lower Sioux Indian community in Minnesota. And I'm so happy to be here. I'm an organizer, a campaigner with the Indigenous Environmental Network. And, our organization is dedicated to supporting and uplifting frontline Indigenous communities and nations who are fighting to protect their lands from extractive development, and who are also trying to find a way forward with a just transition away from the bad and building towards the new and something better, and that's more sustainable for ourselves, which includes localized sustainable energy, which is the primary topic for this discussion as I take it. And so I'm so happy to be a part of this and to uplift the amazing work that is being done amongst the Hunkpapa Oyate and our other Lakota relatives of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation and communities. So I'll check there for now. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chaney, and I'm also with Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples. Also working closely with Joe McNeil on this project. Machie Joe. I'm Lakota of the Kuichasho Yate in Lower Brule, South Dakota. I'm really happy to be here with everybody, all the relatives, and to be a part of this conversation, as the topic is our future, really, like our way going forward, and our way of going forward with our integrity and cultural values intact. So with that, I will turn it over back to Joe, and just letting you guys all know that we're excited to be here with Joe and to uplift this project and the work.
Well, great. Thank you all very much for your introductions. And what we're here, talking about today is beyond no DAPL, renewable energy and self-determination is the topic of our discussion. And we reflect back on no DAPL, meaning Wichoni, water is life, that simple call to protect our water against extractive sources of energy, that being the pipeline. And that fight that is being fought, that wasn't just here, but it's being fought all over. Bears Ears, remember Bears Ears. We got to remember Tara Huskow up at stop line 3 right now, and we send our prayers and our efforts to her and our support to her. But everywhere else this is happening in all indigenous countries, in indigenous lands, where we need to stop this extractive energy, because it's a slow suicide. And us as Native people, from our roots, we honor the earth. And a shout out to Honor the Earth on that one too. But we do honor the earth, and our prayer is, from our toes to the sky, through to our relatives, and that's kind of where we go to and from. So this project, Standing Rock, had thought to a couple of years back to start a Section 17. And we're a public power authority, so we're a not-for-profit, and I think that's very important moving forward. Is that also the revenue generation from this project will go to support our communities for infrastructure build, and that's really coming back to self-determination and what renewable energy means to communities like ours. And we look at where we were placed as on reservations on our own land was most times, if not the worst pieces of land, and we were meant to make do, being force-fed food that wasn't of our being. So we're turning back with food sovereignty effort, language revitalization, culture revitalization. And so to have this type of revenue projection coming back into the tribe is really important, and we're crowdfunding this. So it's the people powering the people to do the work of the people. It's all about the people and the balance of the earth. So I just wanted to lay that out there as we get into the discussion, because everyone's done a lot of work around this. Chris has supported us, and a lot of foundations have supported us to get started. Seventh Generation, of course, Wallace Global Fund, the Sierra Club, have been major players, the Christensen Fund. And I think finding those partners to start off with that are looking to make a balance, to strike a balance, moving ahead is really important, because we see the forest for the trees on this. Our children are going to be facing a crippling environment, and we have to do something about it now. So I'm pretty sure we have a topic of questions that we'd like to discuss, and I don't want to dominate here, and the people on this that are more apt to do that. So I'll turn it over.
Well, I'm excited. Personally, I want to say, like, I'm so happy to be working. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong place. I'm looking right here. I'm so happy to be working with you, Joe, on this, and I've known you, Joe, my entire life. Since I was a very young man. Our families have been going to the same spiritual centers for a long time, and have a strong relationship. Have had a strong relationship with our relatives up in Standing Rock, and especially our family and relatives are part of the Sitting Bull camp. Oh. And when Dakota Access Pipeline became what it was, like, it was almost I don't want to say it in a bad way. I don't want this to be taken in a bad way, but I was fortunate because I knew I knew the people involved. You know, I know the heart of the people who are leading that fight, and you know, and I think that people don't. I think we don't realize that the fight against Dakota Access Pipeline was not really a fight about a individual struggle. It wasn't about individuals fighting it. It was the people rising up and saying, no, we have power here. We're going to wield that power, and we're going to do what we can to protect the sacred, and not just protect like it wasn't just a matter of protecting the water and like the drinking water for the tribe there, but it was also about protecting the sacredness of the land and itself, and the history of the ancestors who've passed on. Right, there was a number of burial grounds, there's sacred sites along the path that were totally just bulldozed. And coming full circle, I'm so happy to be re-engaged in this space, to see how the people are continuing that and taking control and power of their energy, right? Taking it one step further. It's like we always spend time talking about what we're fighting against, that we don't really take time to talk about what we're fighting for. And I see what you all are doing as a part of that struggle. But I guess I want to ask it's not a silly question, but it's like a very base level question, because I always like to think about what is, oftentimes we get used to using language, like very eloquent language, that we forget not everybody may understand, right? So I want to ask a question to you, Joe, and maybe and Chris, and like you, Seven Generations been like supportive of this, but where do we get our energy from? What is it? What makes this special? I guess the question about, because we know energy is out there somewhere. They create it, they burn fossil fuels, and it comes through the wires and comes to our home. But what's the unique nature for tribes and communities, and what is this? What makes this different for Standing Rock?
I think when we take a look at how we're designing our renewable energy platform here with the wind farm, first of all, is the cultural siding of it. You know, we're putting it on a set of hills in between here and Porcupine. And we've had our THPO, Tribal Historic Preservation Office, go out there and take a look at sacred sites, because we're completely avoiding sacred sites. And if there's one that's in a path at any juncture in this, we move the project, we don't move the site. And what's important about that is because we, for generations and millennia, have prayed with the earth, have prayed in places, have connection to the earth. And those connections are still there. You can walk along the hills and sometimes feel people with you, feel spirit with you, and feel that connection to where you're around. And that was some place where someone still prayed, where they prayed, you know, and there's that spiritual connection. So we have that wherever we are, and we sit and we talk, or we, you know, humblecha, you know, for certain things. We seek vision, or we give of ourselves for our people so that they may live. A person might have done that on a hill somewhere, so we make sure that we protect that. And so for us, doing it in this way provides that connection is going to be there for generations to come yet. And I think it's important that we respect our history and our present, so that, you know, us as being good ancestors, make sure that the land is still in the place where we found it, because we belong to the land. The land doesn't belong to us. And I think that really resonates through to how we get our energy now. You know, that's through those extractive processes of coal and oil, hydro. You know, hydro flooded our lands and took out, you know, the best part of our lands here along the Oahe, Standing Rock and Cheyenne River, and the communities were flooded with no regard. So as Native nations, as Indigenous people, we have always been victims of infrastructure build without consideration to our own people and our futures, but also to the respect that we have for the land. And I think that's somewhere where this is turning the pivot, to make sure that that is a priority number one. First is being that caretaker of the land. Chris?
I support that, Joe, definitely. First of all, I'd like to give a shout out for all of those Indigenous people and people of color who are standing in front of the Democratic National Headquarters now and demanding that some recognition given to climate change. You know, the current source of energy is all of those things that Joe mentioned. In addition, that impacts Dine communities is uranium. You know, devastation of uranium. And oddly enough, a lot of the environmental organizations are saying, hey, let's go to more of nuclear fuel because it's clean energy. Well, it's clean energy, but the devastation of it is beyond compare. You know, and the livelihood, the lasting of the deadliness of uranium is thousands and thousands of years. You know, I think what we have here with Standing Rock is a true and real just transition. That Native people, Indigenous peoples will be able to set the tone for where we're going in the future. That we need to, and I don't mean to suggest we need to, what is happening currently at Standing Rock is a accepting the responsibility of providing energy, clean energy, to the world. Climate change is not only happening here in the United States, but it's happening throughout the world. And we have an opportunity to set the pace, to talk about issues that are affecting not only our people, but everybody. And certainly the No DAPL campaign, people were motivated because of climate change, because the troubadours, if you will, are at their back door. The Christian influence of American society and the direction that it's taken has been devastating. It's time for a change, time for more spiritualness, time for a deeper commitment to the earth. And that's what's wrapped up here. So Stephen, do you have a comment?
You know, I think you guys are really just nailing the key points, and I guess like the basis of our commitment to this work. And like you said, it's just about keeping our cultures intact, the land as a living being, and our connection to it and our responsibility and relationship to it, protecting that and really just moving that forward. So now I think, you know, Joe mentioning like the project at Standing Rock, for example, just being able to move forward in a way that makes sense, not just economically, but also spiritually, and just doing that at the beginning of that project and not as an afterthought, I think is a sign of where we are at right now, and the line that we're not willing to cross when it comes to providing energy and energy in every sense of that word.
You know, a common misconception is that wind farms kill birds of prey. And we did some research on that. And maybe if Stephen can share some of those findings, that current energy systems kill more birds than wind farms.
Yeah, definitely. But before I do that, I just want to remind all the relatives that are watching to, you know, if you have any questions for Chris or Dallas or Joe, please send them my way, and I will forward them to everybody here. But I think what Chris is just saying, it touches a little bit on some of like these, I guess the counter, I guess like the myths that are involved with going forward with renewable energy. There's a lot of like talk about, you know, what about the wind farms, you know, impacting the birds and things like that. Yes, there is an impact, but when we look at these things as they are happening currently with like coal plants and things like that, those numbers are just like really astronomical compared to what's happening there with like some of these wind farms. So I guess it's just like this, it's like a narrative that's pushed against some of the renewable language, and kind of like really just wanting us to stay where we're at. It's like, well, if we can't go forward like this, if we go forward this way, we're gonna kill these things, hurt these things, and all that. And I just think like it's a distraction, more or less. I think what we're really saying is we're trying to do these things in a way that's not going to desecrate our homelands. These are our homes. We're not trying to destroy our homes. We're trying to move away from the things that are currently killing, our homelands and ourselves, and that detachment from that. So I think, that's just a great point, Chris. And, I think Dallas, has a lot more of that sort of knowledge around these general things. So I would just like to ask, Dallas, if you could share a little bit just about like, you guys are deep in it over there, and particularly you yourself, it's like this, it's your passion, right? It's like your commitment, even just what you were sharing briefly with the relatives before we started. Like, these are the issues that we need to be focusing on, and not the distractions and these buying into these narratives that no longer serve us.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. I think I want to take a moment to also recognize the fact that it's 4 identified men speaking here, but we also have so much leadership and direction from matriarchs in our community, including, I know, the Anpetu Wi. This project has had tremendous leadership and guidance, and maybe Joe later on you might be able to speak to that, some of the guidance and who's directing this, right? And I think that we often forget that there's so many people behind the scenes that you don't see who are making this possible. So I want to recognize that. And oftentimes those are matriarchs, are women in our communities who are doing some tremendous work. And I think that what your point made, both Chris and Stephen, it's great to really break down those. Every time, you know how it is. I know folks that work in Native communities and other oppressed communities. Every time you try to do something good, there's got to be some person that's got to be like, oh, well, you could do this, or why are you doing that? Like, there's always criticism or critiques or challenges that we not only encounter within our communities, but also the outside community. I mean, hey, the system in which we live in, this entire economic system, is designed for us to not have power.
Right.
As people.
Yep.
It is designed for us as indigenous communities not to have power over what happens to our lands. It's designed to have power over to decide what happens to our water. We have no decision power over our energy system. That's the way it was set up.
Right.
And so what communities are doing, what tribal nations are doing, what institutions and nonprofit organizations that are doing, are reclaiming that power. And that's can be frightening to the system. That's why we see the opposition. That's why we see those roadblocks go up. They're saying, "Oh, well, no, you guys can't put up solar panels and wind farms. We're going to do everything we can to make it hard for you to do that." And so it's Joe. You might pass it over to you, but to maybe speak on some of that.
I think it's really important that you brought that up, because the money is what represents that opposition. For so long here in North Dakota, the talk of solar was put down by oil and the utilities, the GNTs, the generation transmission companies that were already here, that do that through natural gas, coal burning. And they said the latitude doesn't work for solar. But it was only through national pressure that they decided to open up a 500 megawatt portfolio for renewables, because they were dead against solar, saying the latitude didn't work. The same latitude exists in Germany, and they're banging it with solar. So it's the money that's doing the talking. It's the money that keeps us down. It's the money that keeps us out of the systems, because we weren't meant to be participants in that system. So I'm happy we're going into this discussion talking about the outside forces, because I had a conversation in Cannonball the other day talking about the wind farm, and I go into all the districts and having these discussions, and people are bringing back up these discussions about, we tried this 10 years ago, Joe. We tried this 20 years ago, and this is what happened, and this is what, how we were pushed back against. So there's a long history, not just here at Standing Rock, but everywhere else, trying to make a break it and crack into the system. But I think now is the time. We have partners, we have visibility, and I think that is the other big part about Standing Rock. Not to put anyone else down or anything else down that happened in our history. Alcatraz was one of those moments too. Wounded Knee was one of those moments. Everywhere else where we spoke up for ourselves and our rights, those are our moments. But here we have continuous push for this last year, 2-3 years, in saying we're not invisible anymore. And the reason we're not invisible anymore is because our message has always been true, is that we have to take care of the place we live. We have to make sure that that message is understood. We have to take care of our Mother Earth. That goes back to following the guidance of the female. Phyllis Young, she's one of our board members, and she's very adamant, not just adamant, she's very educational in this point, that the Tate Dopa, the wind, is a female spirit. And another long cousin of mine is talking about, Joe, when we put these wind towers up, Tate Dopa and the Wakia Oyate, the thunder beings, will be bringing that wind to us and through us to provide energy. So we are living back with our elements, our spirits, the thunder beings. And, like when my grandfathers passed away, the thunder came. And that's when the Pateo Yate came, the Buffalo Nation came, to get him. But these are all those connections that go back to the teachings of our mothers and the female, and having that respect for the female. And I'm happy you pointed it out, Dallas, is that, we got 4 men here, but I think that moreover is that, when my wife's and my mother tells me to do something, I'm the soldier. Got it. Check. Let's get it done. And it's the same on this board. Fawn Yellow Fat had carried this project for she really developed this project when she worked for the tribe, and she went on to teach at the elementary school, teaching math, but she serves as our chairwoman. And so it's really her effort that got us to this point, and working with our partners and developing this over the last 5 years, to bring us to where we are now. And they said, Joe, how about you take it and run it? Run with it. And I was more than happy to say, yes, let's do this, because this has been a dream of mine, to have renewable energy here. So what we'll do with that revenue is establish microgrids, and the technology is getting better year by year, month by month, that those microgrids will go to serve our communities and our districts to reduce the cost of power. Won't eliminate it, but reduce it. But we control our own destiny by that. So we can use that revenue to build much more power, so that we get to the point where electricity is almost going to be a misnomer. When we can get back to the parts of our lives where we don't have to worry about Americanized or capitalized systems of living, and get back to being who we are. Hila Kota, Kimimi Malak said to me the other day, and I went, Hila Kota, she said, to be human again. That's what that means, to be human again. That's decolonizing the mind. So I went, that's beautiful. And it was just a simple phrase. And so it is the women that bring us back to our center and guide us to where we're going to go. It's the givers of our lives.
Can I ask a question, Joe? The basic info. How big of what are you envisioning? What does this project look like? How many windmills and so on, and where are you putting it? And also, I'm really curious. This actually speaks to the third question here, is about what is the process about picking that. What process did you go through to pick the locations with the THPO? And folks that don't know, that's the Historic Preservation Office. Those are usually the folks you consult with, is to make sure that you're not disrupting anything, right? I know that's also a consideration that people bring to talk about as well.
Yeah, I think that's also involved in the EIS. So we have to follow all those steps and make sure that we're not skipping anything, because it's our land to say, well, we can do what we want. It's our land. We still have to have that respect and have this be a respectable, upright project, step by step by step. So it doesn't show that we're cutting any shortcuts anywhere. But we are looking at 235 megawatts, and that is roughly 60 turbines, 4.3 megawatt turbines. And the site was located on a secondary wind study through AWS True Power, done, I think, roughly 6 years ago, the work that Fawn was doing. And it had identified on a higher level that we have roughly 50% wind capacity, real strong winds up here on the North Dakota side that are in close proximity to the transmission line. Now that's the real key to this thing, is having proximity to transmission. And I think that that's where we're going to be looking at in the future, not just to build more transmission out of Standing Rock, but also more transmission out of other Native nations. And that's like the goal of OSPA, Oceti-Sakowin Power Authority. They're a public power authority, and they've been active for over 10 years. Standing Rock as a tribe is part of that power authority. And they're looking to build large transmission that touches almost every tribe in South Dakota and get it out to market. So those are our real opportunities where we can derive revenue to determine our own futures.
Yeah, I think the revenue aspect is an important question or concern for us right now. We're still in the early stages of development. You know, certainly foundation support has been great. The more income, the more donations, the more support that we get now will enable the tribe's ownership, the ultimate ownership and control of the project, to be a reality. If we move too quickly, if we bring in a lot of big money quickly, they will buy up the organizing capabilities of SAGE and the tribe, and they will ultimately own the plant or own the power. We don't want that to happen. Our destination from the very beginning was, how do we develop a power plant that is owned and operated by Standing Rock Sioux Tribe? And in that ability to own and operate, they will be the first in the nation. They will be the first in the nation to control such an industry. And that's saying a huge amount of, we certainly need power purchasers sometime in the near future. We need the big money to come in, but only at our control, only at Standing Rock's control, so that we can decide for ourselves where we're going with the dollars and how to spend it.
We've had some good conversations with a few developers already that understand what our position is. We want to maintain a position of ownership throughout each transaction of the wind farm. And that will be a model, you know, for other tribes to do, or other communities to do. You know, you get enough people together with enough land together, you can do something like this. And so this, I hope, will be something transformative to bring power to communities, power back to the people, you know, to say we can make a change that's not controlled by capitalism in such a way. I'm not saying to be anything else, but, you know, this is power, community-driven power. And I think that's important to say. And thank you, Chris, for that particular description, because without us maintaining a position of ownership throughout the process, no matter how large or small that position of ownership is, the presence is critical. Or we become a customer on our own lands again, you know? Oh.
And to respond to the question about the Biden administration, we're looking with a lot of hope that they will provide some support. But the tribe's dedication, it shouldn't be altered in any way by getting government money. At Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples, we've existed for 43 years with a firm commitment from our board not to take government support. And we have been successful. I think government support is needed, but it has to be controlled by the tribe. It cannot be a government support that is ultimately leading toward more acculturation and more direction and less ownership of the project. more control of the project in a true light of self-determination, a responsibility that Sage Council and the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe has taken on, the responsibility to manage their own self-determined destiny. And that's an important step. How do we manage it? You know, some people will say, well, Indians don't have the capacity to do it. Already they're throwing roadblocks into it. You know, Joe hasn't got the capacity. Seventh Generation Fund hasn't got the capacity. Dallas hasn't got the capacity. How can you make this possible? Well, I've contended for years, one, that capacity can be purchased. Give us $1 and we'll buy capacity, like everybody else in the world does. We can make capacity happen. We have capacity on the board, a Indigenous women-led board, not only with Sage, but with Seventh Generation Fund. You know, we are directed and controlled by Native women. And I think that's an important step, is how do people see our own capacity, our own capabilities, our own administrative responsibilities and control of the project, and support that.
I want to add on to that. There are two things. Respond to Doug's question about the Biden administration and this question of the capacity, the capability for us to take control of our destiny. One, this is just my personal opinion, but also the opinion of our organization I work for, the Indigenous Environmental Network, is that yes, we saw a tremendous victory in getting Donald Trump out of office in relationship to protecting Indigenous rights and furthering our agenda as Indigenous peoples. But it's no guarantee that it's in the big picture, it's no guarantee that our people are the self-determination that we want as Indigenous peoples is going to happen unless we push and demand for it, if that makes sense. Like, even though we may have Biden in office, we still have to continue to push our agenda to the fullest degree to protect our inherent rights as Indigenous peoples. In the case of my peoples, in which the Standing Rock Nation is a part of, the Oceti-Sakowin, it is our duty to continue to further and advance our agenda to see a fully realized, self-determined Oceti-Sakowin people. And that's, you know, a matter of taking control of our energy, taking control of aspects of our livelihoods, but at the same time, holding the U.S. government accountable for its treaty obligations. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we will have to continue to, we can't ease up on the pressure on a Biden administration, even though it has made a number of promises and it has made good signals. We're still going to have to hold the feet to the fire about what self-determination means. And one critical aspect that we are going to be moving forward on as IEN, but I know that our allies are with us, is we need to normalize the language of free, prior, informed consent, and that Biden needs to use his executive authority to require federal agencies to obtain free, prior, informed consent from tribes when it comes to projects that are impacting their rights, which includes energy projects. And I think that's absolutely essential, and I want to see us to push forward on that. And I forgot my second point, so I'll just leave it there for now. Like, that's the hardcore part of me that gets sidetracked very easily on this.
You know, it goes back to our history of having infrastructure put in upon us, you know, for the benefit of those that have the money to invest in it, whether that be highways, oil pipelines, transmission lines, anything of the sort. You know, communities of color have traditionally been not just marginalized, but ignored in their right to live in a place that is environmentally friendly to raising generations of our people. You know, whether that's Indigenous, Black, you know, so Indigenous is not just us here in North America, but Central America as well. The Mexica people, all of us are Indigenous people. That border crossed us. They didn't cross the border. So, but I can go down that road too real fast. Um,
We all
but
can, brother.
yeah, there's a question that was asked is that are there currently any tribes setting an example in energy independence? And I want to recognize Gila River Power Authority. They've been doing it for a while quietly, and they've been knocking it out. They're a good example for us in any tribe to take a look at how that could be done, in a certain business aspect. And Navajo Power is coming up, and they've been working with Sierra Club and I think seventh generation. Am I correct in a way?
Not directly, not directly,
But
but
Navajo Power is
we
looking to bring
certainly
a
love
lot
to
of,
work with them.
yeah, definitely. They're looking to bring a lot of solar on, so that is really other big projects that are happening out there. And we're looking to actually be online roughly in 2023, provided all of our Met Tower studies that we are writing grants. And that's one thing that I think where, the question was, can governments help? And it's looking at grants and reaching out to those other tribes who have done grants or successful in grants, or those consultants that work with tribes, to be successful in grant writing, to spur on energy development as it was supported by the government previously. Western Area Power Authority, the hydro dams, those weren't fully investor funded, those were government sponsored projects. So in that same train, that same vein, we need to take a look at how we're going to impact the Biden administration to say that this should be the same thing, same due given to tribes, and demand that because it's only right. And there's a lot owed to tribes as far as repatriation goes, to where we've been put, and we're the last people to be recognized and then invisibilized, basically vanished, from American culture. Put on reservations, etc. So that push and that stance, I think, is where we need to move forward as we continue to have these projects come online and support one another and have more awareness to them.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Joe, to say that we are open. We stand ready for suggestions from anybody in the listening audience to leverage grant support, to leverage government support for the project. I think we've got a base funding, but to move it down the road quickly, we need to have more donations. We need to have more donations that the tribe controls. And only in that way can we move aggressively. Otherwise, the project begins to slow, and we don't want that to happen. We want to keep moving. We want to move aggressively toward this.
That's an important piece there, because projects must continue to show progress in order to maintain a position, not just on the queue, but in an awareness for power purchasers that your project is real. Because a lot of projects, whether they just moreover, energy projects that it gets started tend to drop off about 70%. So, and I see Kim Craven, and I want to give a shout out to Kimberly Craven because she's been a long-standing person in this industry, and she was talking about nrel.gov as a good resource for tribes and offers TA for renewable energy. They've been doing that since I was involved in this discussion back in 2008. We first started having conversations. So there are a lot of folks out there who've been doing this for a long time, and it's good to see it come to the fore.
I think I just wanted I've been listening in and just taking in all the information. And I think like a couple of things that come to mind, even earlier in the conversation when we were talking about acknowledging the women that are leading this movement, really our cultural grounding, our matriarchs, our societies, is that, right now what we're talking about is sovereignty. And I've heard it come up in just a number of ways: energy sovereignty, spiritual sovereignty, every way. I think that when we're talking about this project, or we're talking about any of these power projects going forward, it's sovereignty, and sovereignty in our own language, but as well as recognizing and needing and acknowledging that it must be recognized by the governments, our sovereignty as nations. And so with that, I would just like to, ask you all, what do you think? How, as we're going forward, what do you envision in the next 4 years or 10 or 100 when it comes to that sovereignty? What do we need to do today? What can we do today? What can people do today ourselves going forward? And what does it look like as we progress? As we're at our own tables, we're creating our own tables that are about our self-determined thoughts and goals. What needs to happen next, and what do you envision? So I know that's a large question, but I think it's having those large thoughts to have us like really focused and grounded moving forward when we are putting up met towers or putting in transmission lines or all of those things. As long as we are focused and based in our culture, what does it look like? Chris. Take it away, Chris. I know, Chris is somebody who can take that large question and give us a great answer.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having faith in me and to respond to that big question. But I think sovereignty is essential, and sovereignty as defined by Native people has to be a spiritual word. It has to be based in our spiritual understanding. The power that brings a tribe together is nothing more than a spirit around us that brings us together, that holds us together. Language, culture, philosophy, traditions, ceremony, all of which are bound up somehow in that concept of sovereignty and preserved for our current generation and for our future generations. How do we keep that in sight? How do we keep that in our direct vision that we want to accomplish this project, but remain firmly committed to the concept of that responsibility to pull us together? How can this project pull the Standing Rock Tribe, the broader Sioux Nation together as a single unit? And only coming together as a single unit do we combine thoughts and prayers and concepts of sovereignty that will only grow in strength and will be carried on to future generations. Recently, we're looking at the concept of Christmas. Where the hell did that come from? Concept of Christmas, going out and spending a lot of money. Cyber Monday, there was almost $10 billion spent online. That's outrageous in this particular environment, in this particular economy where nobody has money to spend that much money on gifts. That is absolutely beyond my thought process. And how much do we fall into that as Native peoples? Christmas is a Christian holiday. It's far removed from traditional sovereignty and that power that binds us together. So that's all I will rant about that issue.
I think that was a great answer, Chris. Joe, did you want to add something?
Thinking, is the community-driven aspect of this conversation in determining what our people want and expect for energy, what they're willing to put up with, basically, in their own areas when they realize, when we have the discussion about realizing what certain systems will bring, they'll bring a certain profile to your eyesight, to the landscape, but it's going to bring us, again, cheaper energy, jobs, bring us an ability to buy our land back. And I hate to say that, but in a lot of places we have to buy our land back. And I think that real important push, like Nick Tilson down at NDN, with land back, it's not just get the land back, but it's use that land for the original purpose that it was intended for. The Black Hills, that's our place of prayer. Bear Butte is our place of prayer. Those things should be exclusively ours to continue to utilize in a way that we preserve it for the future, not for someone to rip all the resources out and make their own dime and then die and then leave these scars on the earth that are going to go to someone else to try to do the same thing. So yeah, I just took a left turn.
No, I feel like that was right on it, Joe, and that's what I was hoping to bring out, is just like complete sovereignty, and what does sovereignty mean for us in going forward. And I think it goes again to touch upon the section 106, all of that, of just like being able to implement these projects in a way that makes sense to us culturally, and not just all of the other things. When you mention the Black Hills and Bear Butte, it's being able to recognize the land as a living being and thing, and not just as a resource, and as a deep relationship.
If I may add, I think that I want to be like, we're mindful that there might be two audiences. There's obviously numerous audiences here, but there are those who are non-native or who live outside of communities who want to help and support. And then there's also our own folks with our own native people within community, or who are maybe outside of community, but who are native themselves. And I think that what people can do depends on where they fall in that, right? I think for our own folks, I think a critical need is to allow ourselves to dream, right? I think the way colonization has worked is that it has limited our ability to really forecast our vision and to radically imagine a future, because we're dealing with, I was about to say a 4-letter word, but we're dealing with stuff happening right now that's always happening. There's always a crisis that we're responding to, that we often lack the time or the space to think ahead beyond what's happening, down the road. And in order for us to break that cycle, we have to give ourselves that space, that room, the ability to radically imagine a future that is better for the next 7 generations. And that can be challenging, and especially for tribal leaders and organizations who are trying to do that work. And so I think that's a conversation that we have to carry as people, that we allow ourselves that space to dream big. Because like Joe had mentioned, you may get your community may get some windmills up, but you may not reap the benefits or the cost of that until down the road, right? Because they have to pay back the loans, you got to pay back all this stuff, all your investments got to get paid off before you start reaping the benefits. And that's something that we have to be mindful of, because you can't set it up and then like 12 months later, like, oh, well, I thought you said we're going to save money on this. You're like, no, that's not how it works. This is a long-term plan. And that's something critical for those outside. I mean, I don't have a clear answer because I see the questions here, how people can support, but I definitely want to uplift this whole conversation of supporting the Anpetu Wi project. If you want to support, I don't know how can they do that, Joe? Like, how can common day people, if they have the resources, support y'all?
Yeah, they can go on Anpetuwi.com and hit the donate button and give, go click the button and give monthly or give one time, but just reach out and give, because every bit that is given gives us more ownership and gives us that ability to have self-determination, to build sovereignty. As we're talking about our relatives that look at things like for today. I have so many relatives that live for today. Well, I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm going to do it today. And that's the truth, because we live in scarcity. We go from crisis to crisis and we don't plan. So, this is getting out into the communities and looking at that food sovereignty piece, getting back to buying more land, getting more land so that we can, on our own lands, so that we can plan to grow crops, plan to can, plan to dry, make bapa, gabla bapa, live back to a greater degree to those systems that made us live here for millennia and millennia. And in the last 400 years, the world went to hell. But the way we lived successfully for thousands upon thousands of years. So I want to thank everybody for that. And particularly, getting back to Anpetuwi.com and donating for us to have more ownership in this, because the more we're successful, hopefully the more everyone else can be successful. And this isn't something that we're looking to just have as ours. This is a gift we want to build and not sell it because we're not for profit. We want to show what we can do and then share that with other tribes, share that with other communities, so that no one has to recreate the wheel.
And just for our listeners, to navigate to that, for those who may be unfamiliar with Anpetu Wi, how to spell it, AMPETUWI.com. Correct, Joe?
Yep, correct.
Anpetu.com. You can navigate to that website. There's an option to donate. You can visit the Facebook page, and or visit us at 7 Generation Fund as well. Either way, there are multiple avenues in the ways that you can support this project.
And there have been a lot of supporters of the project. NDN, Seventh Generation, of course. I want to thank Dallas and Lexi Tom, from Indigenous Environmental Network, Indigenous Peoples Movement. They're having a simulcast on their IG right now on Facebook. We want to thank them. We want to thank our own people at Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. And if you go to Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, there's a donate button to help us continue the fight against the pipeline. So we're pushing, we're fighting, and we need help, and we need your help. We want to thank you for coming 4 years back, to stand with us against the pipeline. But let's stand. This is our response to the pipeline. So let's stand together and make the difference against extractive oil.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
And I just wanted to say for our people that are tuning in Facebook Live and in the webinar here, the links are in the chat, so you can check those out and you can follow those and navigate those. But I just want to thank everybody for speaking today, Chris, Joe, and Dallas. And as we wrap up our time here, I just wanted to allow one opportunity or some more opportunity for some closing thoughts and conversation, as we close out here today, and what happens next, and how people can continue to engage with this project, and just in general when it comes to renewable energy and our self-determination.
Good. I'd just like to add, we have a fantastic relationship with Connexus. It's a New York-based web program that has created a platform for us to be able to reach out to communities and ask for donations. Without Connexus' support, without their experience and knowledge, we would be hard-pressed to make this connection. So thank you to Connexus.
Very much.
So take it away, Joe. What is
I want to see if Dallas can slap me virtually online. Couldn't resist. It's good to see my relatives again today, and reach out, through the info at anpetuwi.com. There's questions we couldn't get to today, and we look forward to answering those. We'll answer those as they come through, and reach out to IEN and 7th Gen, for the work that they're doing to support the great work, because a lot of this work goes to help the tribes that are trying to do the work on the ground. And there's been a long effort to do that. So on Pilame Apelo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dallas. Chris, any final thoughts?
Nope, that's it. I think Joe's did it all.
I just thank everybody for joining us, and one final ask for everybody out there is just to continue to support the grassroots efforts that are going down in your community, to continue to build up our community. For all of our non-native relatives out there, reach out directly to those folks if you want to help, and be ready for some work, because there's a lot of things we're working towards, and and we can't do it all alone. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and we'll talk to you all again soon.
Oh. Dope shot.